They lived by a code sharper than their swords. For centuries, the samurai were the elite warriors of Japan, not just masters of combat, but guardians of a strict moral code known as Bushido, the way of the warrior. This wasn't just about loyalty to a master or bravery on the battlefield. It was about how to live, how to die, and how to face everything in between with honor. Bushido shaped a culture, inspired empires, and continues to echo through martial arts, military ethics, and even modern business practices today. But what was it really? And how did men who carried swords also carry a code that demanded discipline, justice, and at times self-destruction? Today, we'll explore the soul of the samurai. From ancient scrolls to real-life warriors who embodied the code, get ready for a journey into one of the most captivating philosophies in history. This is Bushido Explained. The birth of Bushido, where the code began. The image is iconic, a samurai kneeling in silence, sword beside him, armor gleaming in the final light of day. But what you don't see in that picture, what the movies often skip, is what's going on in his mind. More powerful than his katana, more defining than his armor, was the code he lived by. That code was Bushido, the way of the warrior. The samurai class began to emerge in the 9th century during Japan's Heian period. As imperial control weakened, regional lords, daimyo, began hiring their own armed protectors. These warriors, loyal and fiercely disciplined, became known as samurai, literally one who serves. But swords alone weren't enough. As warfare evolved, so did the need for an inner code. Combat grew ritualized, honor became currency, and over centuries, a living, breathing philosophy began to take form. That philosophy was Bushido, not a single list of rules, but a blend of values drawn from Shinto, Confucianism, and Zen Buddhism. From Shinto came loyalty and reverence for ancestors. Confucianism taught duty, hierarchy, and filial piety. Zen added a detachment and clarity, especially about death. Together, these shaped a moral compass. Bushido didn't teach how to win, it taught how to live and how to die. To a samurai, fearing death was dishonorable. Zen taught that clinging to life was a weakness. In battle, hesitation could be fatal, so samurai trained not just in combat, but in acceptance of death, calmly, without flinching. One story illustrates this perfectly. Kusunoki Masashige, a 14th century warrior, was asked how he'd handle impossible odds. He said he would fight and die so long as it showed loyalty to Emperor Go-Daigo, and he did just that, falling in the Battle of Minetagawa. He became a legend, remembered not for victory, but for unshakable devotion. So what exactly did Bushido ask of a samurai? Though it evolved over time, the most referenced version comes from the 18th century text Hagakure, written by Yamamoto Tsunetomo, a samurai-turned-monk. He laid out 7 central virtues: rectitude, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. Rectitude, gi, meant moral righteousness. It wasn't about following orders blindly, but doing what was right, even at significant personal cost. A samurai without integrity was considered hollow. Courage, yu, wasn't foolish bravado. It was thoughtful, decisive action in the face of fear. Training in swordsmanship, archery, and tactics wasn't just about fighting. It was about acting with precision and confidence. Benevolence, jin, is surprising in a warrior's code, but the samurai were expected to show compassion, particularly to the weak and defeated. Mercy was not weakness, it was a mark of control. Then came respect and honesty, which governed daily conduct. Honor and loyalty, however, ran deepest. Honor was not a public image, it was internal. To lose one's honor was worse than death. Hence the act of seppuku, ritual suicide, which allowed a disgraced samurai to reclaim dignity by dying with resolve. The story of the 47 ronin embodies Bushido like few others. In 1701, Lord Asano Naganori was provoked by a corrupt court official, Kira Yoshinaka. In a moment of anger, Asano attacked Kira, an unforgivable act in the shogun's palace. Asano was ordered to commit seppuku. His retainers, now ronin, or masterless samurai, waited nearly 2 years before killing Kira in revenge. They then turned themselves in and were also sentenced to death. 46 died by seppuku. 1 was pardoned. Though they broke the law, public opinion hailed them as heroes. Why? Because their loyalty outweighed legality. They followed Bushido to the bitter honorable end. Modern scholars still debate. Were the ronin outlaws or moral exemplars? That debate itself shows Bushido's complexity. It wasn't a fixed doctrine. It was a deeply personal code for navigating impossible choices. Bushido didn't vanish when the samurai class was abolished during the Meiji Restoration in the late 1800s. It evolved. Parts of it were even adapted into nationalistic propaganda during World War II, far removed from its original intent. But at its heart, Bushido remained about human values, discipline, courage, and honor in the face of uncertainty. Bushido wasn't just a warrior's guide. It became a cultural backbone, and that's what makes it timeless. Living the code, the samurai's daily discipline. If Bushido was the philosophy, the samurai's daily life was its physical embodiment. This wasn't a code tucked in a scroll and forgotten. It was lived, hour by hour, action by action, in everything from combat training to calligraphy. To be a samurai wasn't just to be a warrior, it was to be a whole human being, refined through duty, skill, and discipline. Training began early. By the age of 7, samurai children, especially boys from warrior families, were already being schooled in martial arts. This included the use of the sword, katana, the bow, yumi, spears, yari, and later firearms, tanagashima. But just as important were horseback riding, swimming in armor, and even battlefield tactics. A samurai had to master many forms of combat, not just be good with the blade. The ultimate warrior wasn't the most violent, he was the most prepared. Yet training didn't stop with the physical. Education in reading, writing, poetry, and history was vital. The samurai were among the most literate classes in feudal Japan. Many practiced calligraphy as a daily ritual, seen not as art alone, but as a meditative, character-building discipline. Some even composed haiku to focus the mind. This blending of intellect and combat was what set the samurai apart. You weren't just a fighter, you were a moral being in constant refinement. Perhaps no symbol is more iconic than the katana, the curved steel blade carried with reverence. Forged through hours of labor by master swordsmiths, a katana was more than a weapon. It was an extension of the samurai's soul. The care with which it was maintained reflected the respect a samurai had for life and death. Drawing one's sword was never casual. It was an act steeped in intention. But what about daily behavior? How did Bushido express itself in routine life? One way was through reiki, or proper conduct. This meant treating others with respect, regardless of status. It wasn't weakness, it was a show of internal strength. Bowing appropriately, speaking with humility, and showing patience were all part of the warrior's code. Then there was duty to one's daimyo, or feudal lord. Loyalty was absolute. A samurai would never question an order publicly. To dishonor one's master was to dishonor oneself, and in extreme cases, it warranted seppuku. Yet loyalty wasn't blind obedience. In some rare but revered cases, a samurai might respectfully disobey an unjust order, risking death to uphold a greater moral principle. Bushido also showed up in how samurai handled conflict. Dueling wasn't for sport, it was for honor. Before a challenge, the cause had to be justified. The combatants might exchange letters of intent or even poetry, elevating the encounter beyond simple violence. There's a famous story of Miyamoto Musashi, one of Japan's greatest swordsmen, who often delayed duels for hours, not to disrespect, but to test the patience and emotional control of his opponents. He believed true strength was shown before the first strike. Living by Bushido didn't mean suppressing all emotion. It meant mastering emotion. And this mastery translated into every part of life. How one greeted strangers, responded to insults, or handled personal tragedy. Samurai wives and daughters also learned elements of the code. Though less frequently seen in combat, they managed households, finances, and clan affairs with an equally disciplined mindset. Tomoga Zen, a warrior from the late 12th century, not only fought in battle but commanded troops. Her courage became legendary, proving Bushido could be embodied by anyone committed to its principles. What's remarkable is how this strict moral code created not just effective warriors, but deeply self-aware individuals. The discipline of the samurai was not about perfection, it was about progress, about becoming better, even in the smallest of ways, each day. And now that we understand how Bushido shaped a samurai's daily life, Let's turn to what happened when things went wrong, when disgrace, betrayal, or failure struck. Because in those moments, Bushido wasn't abandoned, it was tested most severely. Honor in death, seppuku, and the ultimate sacrifice. To many modern ears, the idea of ritual suicide is chilling. But in the world of the samurai, seppuku, the act of ending one's own life, was not considered horrific. It was honorable. It was a final, irreversible act of commitment to Bushido, especially in the face of disgrace, failure, or injustice. Seppuku was typically performed by kneeling, plunging a short blade, tanto, into the abdomen and making a precise left-to-right cut. If possible, a trusted second, known as the kaishakunin, would then decapitate the samurai to end the pain swiftly. The ritual was formal, filled with symbolism, and witnessed by peers. It wasn't just death, it was testimony. It declared, "I have taken full responsibility." Why would anyone choose such a fate? Because in samurai society, death was often seen as preferable to a life lived in shame. Let's say you failed to protect your lord, or acted in a moment of cowardice, or were falsely accused but unable to prove your innocence. Seppuku restored your name. It told the world, "I did not run. I faced the ultimate consequence." One of the most widely known cases is that of Saigo Takamori, a 19th century samurai and one of the inspirations for The Last Samurai. After leading a doomed rebellion against Japan's modernization, he committed seppuku on the battlefield rather than surrender. Though controversial, his act was seen as a final, defiant adherence to the old code in a new world. But not all seppuku was voluntary. Sometimes, defeated warriors were ordered to take their own lives. This raised ethical debates even then. Was compelled honor still true honor? The samurai world was deeply hierarchical, and obedience was often demanded at the highest price. Seppuku faded with the end of the samurai era in the 19th century, but the idea of dying with dignity remained embedded in Japanese culture. Even during World War II, the concept, often warped and politicized, was used to promote loyalty and sacrifice. Kamikaze pilots were told they were acting in the spirit of Bushido, though many historians argue this distorted the code into something it never was: blind nationalism. True Bushido was never about death for death's sake. It was about choosing death when all other choices betrayed the code. And in that choice, the samurai found peace. A final clarity, a way to protect what mattered most, even if they themselves would not survive. So what happened after the samurai? After swords were banned and the warriors laid down their arms, did Bushido die with them? Not even close. Echoes of the code, Bushido in the modern world. In the Meiji era, Japan modernized rapidly. Feudal lords were abolished, the caste system dismantled, and the wearing of swords was banned. But the principles of Bushido, discipline, duty, and honor, were absorbed into other institutions: education, business, and the military. Schools taught moral education rooted in Bushido. Martial arts became spiritual practices. Even corporate leaders began to speak of loyalty and sacrifice in terms reminiscent of the old warrior code. To this day, you can still see Bushido at work in Japanese culture. In the tireless dedication of artisans, in the mutual respect shown between business partners, and in the reverence for rituals and etiquette, even in the smallest acts. It isn't about swords anymore, it's about character. Bushido has even inspired people far beyond Japan. Martial arts schools around the world teach not just technique, but philosophy. Soldiers study the code for insights into discipline and purpose. Even in pop culture, films, comics, video games, the lone warrior following a personal moral compass owes a quiet debt to the samurai. In a world of chaos and distraction, Bushido reminds us to stand for something, to pursue excellence with humility, to hold ourselves accountable even when no one else is watching. It's not about living like a 13th century swordsman. It's about carrying ourselves with intention, discipline, and honor, no matter our path. Bushido is not a relic, it's a mirror. And when we look into it, we're invited to ask, what kind of warrior do I want to be? How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the samurai, check out our book, Ancient Japan, a captivating guide to the ancient history of Japan, their ancient civilization, and Japanese culture, including stories of the samurai, shoguns, and Zen masters. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.